Speaker, this debate has lasted some 8 days, over 54 hours, with speeches of powerful sincerity from over 200 honourable and right honourable members. It has been historic for our Parliament and for our country. We have heard contributions from every perspective, looking at all aspects of this complex and vital question. We've seen this House at its most passionate and vigorous, and I thank everyone who has contributed. No one watching this debate can be in any doubt about the strength of this House of Commons as the fulcrum of our democracy. This is a debate about our economy and security, the livelihoods of our constituents, and the future for our children and for generations to come. It goes to the heart of our Constitution, and no one should forget that it is a democratic process that has got us to where we are today. In 2015, my party stood on an election manifesto that had as a centrepiece the promise of an in-out referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union. The British people responded by electing a Conservative government to follow through on that promise. That is what we did when this House voted overwhelmingly to hold the referendum and put the choice in the hands of the British people. Indeed, 470 current members voted in favour of it, and only 32 opposed it. That campaign was keenly fought. It caught the public imagination like few campaigns before it. Turnout was 72%, higher than for any national poll for a quarter of a century. And while not overwhelming, the result was clear and it was decisive. Something this House accepted when we voted overwhelmingly to trigger Article 50. 436 current members voted to do so, only 85 opposed. Parliament gave the people a choice. We set the clock ticking on our departure. And tonight, we will determine whether we move forward with a withdrawal agreement that honours the vote and sets us on course for a better future. The responsibility of each and every one of us at this moment is profound, for this is an historic decision that will set the future of our country for generations. So what are the alternatives that present themselves? First, we could decide it's all too difficult and give up, either by revoking Article 50 or passing the back buck to the British people in a second referendum. But I believe we have a duty to deliver on the democratic decision of the British people, and to do so in a way that brings our country together. A second referendum would lead instead to further division. There'd be no agreement to the question, let alone the answer. It would say to the people we were elected to serve that we were unwilling to do what they had instructed. Now, the second possible outcome is that we leave on the 29th of March without a deal. But I don't believe that's what the British people voted for, because they were told that if they voted to leave, they could still expect a good trading relationship with the European Union. And neither would it be the best outcome. Our deal delivers certainty for businesses, with a time-limited implementation period to prepare for the new arrangements of the future relationship. No deal means no implementation period. Our deal protects the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU, so they can carry on their lives as before. No deal means no reciprocal agreement to protect those citizens' rights. Our deal delivers the deepest security partnership in the EU's history, so our police and security services can continue to work together with their European partners to keep all our people safe. No deal means no such security partnership. And our deal delivers the foundations for an unprecedented economic relationship with the EU that is more ambitious, that is...
I said earlier it was becoming really rather a noisy and unseemly atmosphere, and that has now resumed. It must stop. The Prime Minister must be heard. The Prime Minister.
Our deal delivers the foundations for an unprecedented economic relationship with the EU that is more ambitious than anything they have ever entered into with a third country. It will give us the benefits of trading with the European Union and the ability to forge new trade deals in our own right. No deal means those new trade deals come at the expense of a trade deal with Europe, not in addition to it. So while it is categorically wrong to suggest that our country could not ultimately make a success of no deal, it is equally wrong to suggest that this is the best outcome. Now, third, there is the path advocated by the Leader of the Opposition, and we've heard it again, of calling a general election. But today's vote is not about what's best for the Leader of the Opposition. It is about what is best for the country. And at the end of a general election, whatever the result, the choices facing us will not have changed. It will still be no Brexit, leaving with no deal, or leaving with a deal. And there's no guarantee that an election would make the parliamentary arithmetic any easier. All it would gain is 2 more months of uncertainty and division. In 2017, the two main parties both stood on manifestos that pledged to deliver the result of the referendum. They got over 80% of the vote. People had the opportunity to vote for a second referendum by supporting the Liberal Democrats in 2017. Just 7% of voters did so. It is the job of Parliament to deliver on the promises made at the last election, not to be seeking a new one. Now, some suggest there's a fourth option, to agree that we should leave with a deal on the 29th of March, but to vote this deal down in the hope of going back to Brussels again and negotiating an alternative deal. But no such alternative deal exists. The political declaration sets the framework for the future relationship, and the next phase of negotiations will be our chance to shape that relationship. But we cannot begin those talks unless or until we agree the terms of our withdrawal. And the European Union will not agree to any other deal for that withdrawal. So, having ruled out all of these options, we're left with one: to vote for this deal tonight. One that delivers on the core tenets of Brexit, taking back control of our borders, laws, money, trade and fisheries, but in a way that protects jobs, ensures our security and honours the integrity of our United Kingdom. One that strikes a fair balance between the hopes and desires of all our fellow citizens, those who voted to leave and those who voted to stay in. And if we leave with the deal I'm proposing, I believe we can lay the foundations from which to build a better Britain. And as Prime Minister, I would not stand at this dispatch box and recommend a course of action that I do not believe is in the best interests of our country and our future. And there are differences in this House today, but I believe we can come together as we go forwards. And let me reassure anyone who's in any doubt whatsoever, the government will work harder at taking Parliament with us. And as we move on to the next phase of negotiations, we will be looking to work with Parliament to seek that consensus. But, Mr. Speaker, let me turn to the most contentious element of our deal, the Northern Ireland Protocol. I will go.
My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, knows that what concerns many of us is the possibility of the permanent nature of the Northern Ireland backstop. May I refer her to my Amendment B on the order paper, which sets a deadline for that backstop, and may I ask her what is the attitude of the government to my amendment?
Can I thank my right honourable friend for the question he's asked and for the work that he has been doing to try to find a way through on this particular issue, and I know he's spent a long time consulting with international lawyers on this issue. The government isn't able to accept the amendment that has been selected, that my right honourable friend has put down, that has been selected tonight, because we have a different opinion and a different interpretation of the Vienna Convention. But I note that my right honourable friend has put down an alternative proposals in relation to this issue. The government is willing to look at creative solutions and will be happy to carry on working with my right honourable friend in relation to that particular issue. I said I would turn to the Northern Ireland.
Order. Order. The House must calm itself. Zen. Restraint. Patience. Hear the Prime Minister.
I set out the government's position in detail on my statement in my statement yesterday, so I'm not going to go over it again. But the key thing to remember is this isn't a commitment we're making to the European Union, it's a commitment to the people of Northern Ireland and Ireland that they will be able to carry on living their lives as they do today. It's about saying that whatever happens when we leave the EU, we will honour the Belfast Agreement. Its success has been built on allowing people from both communities in Northern Ireland to feel that their identities are respected under the principle of consent. For many people in Northern Ireland, that means having a seamless land border between the UK and Ireland, which is also essential for their economy. For others, that means fully respecting the fact that Northern Ireland is an intrinsic part of the United Kingdom. No one wants to see the return of a hard border, and as a proud unionist, I share the concerns of members who are determined that we do not undermine the strength of our United Kingdom. But it is not enough simply to make these assertions. We have to put in place arrangements that deliver those ends. And it's not just as simple as some would like it to be. So, as Prime Minister for the whole UK, it's my duty to provide a solution that works for the people of Northern Ireland. The answer lies in agreeing our future economic relationship, but we need an insurance policy to guarantee there will be no hard border if that future relationship is not in place by the end of the implementation period. I'll give way to the Leader of the Democratic Unionist Party.
Very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. And would she agree that whatever one's view on this withdrawal agreement and whatever arguments that people deploy, that we should not be using the peace or the political process in Northern Ireland as arguments for voting for this deal or voting against it? Would she agree that that is completely and utterly out of order? Make that clear to all of our Cabinet colleagues as well.
To the right honourable gentleman, I think everybody across this House is committed to ensuring that we maintain the arrangements of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, that we also ensure that we maintain the many benefits that have come from the peace process in Northern Ireland. And that should not be disrupted, and that should not be affected in any sense. But I also say that whatever future relationship is going to be negotiated or people want to see being negotiated, that insurance policy is essential. Any of the other proposals, Canada, Norway, any number of variations of those models, all of them require the insurance policy, and that is the so-called backstop. And no backstop simply means no deal now and for the foreseeable future. And I don't want to see anybody being able to exploit no deal and bringing doubt about the future of our union as a result of that. And let's remember, if I may say to this House, what the withdrawal agreement does deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. An implementation period, certainty for businesses. Protection of citizens' rights, certainty to thousands of families. No hard border, unfettered access to British and EU markets. Protection of the single electricity market across the island of Ireland, securing energy supply in Northern Ireland. Continued security cooperation with our European allies that the police service of Northern Ireland say is essential, and above all, the protection of the historic Belfast Good Friday Agreement. The deal we have puts our union first. Now, let me turn to the contribution of the Leader of the Opposition. Characteristic of his whole approach to Brexit, long on criticism and short on coherence. He's claimed that he'll be able to renegotiate the deal in a matter of weeks, get a drastically different outcome, and despite the European Union making clear that's impossible. But everything he does is designed to avoid taking any difficult decisions, saying one thing to one group and another thing to another. In the general election, he said in his manifesto, freedom of movement will end. On Sunday, he said, I'm not against the free movement of people. When asked about Brexit in a German newspaper, he said, we can't stop it. The referendum took place. Article 50 has been triggered. In his speech at Wakefield last week, and again this evening, he said a second referendum was an option on the table. He says Labour would run an independent trade policy, but he wants to join the customs union. He says he's opposed to no deal, but he says he's opposed to withdrawal agreement and the backstop without which there is no deal. So the question is, what is his position? Because he has failed in his responsibility to provide a credible alternative to the government of the day by pursuing from the start a cynical course designed to serve his own political interest and not the national interest. He has forfeited the right to demand loyalty from those of his MPs who take a more pragmatic view, because he doesn't care whether we leave or not, with a deal or not, as long as he can maximise disruption and uncertainty and the likelihood of a general election. And I hope that members opposite, who faithfully pledged to their constituents that they would respect the result of the referendum, that they think carefully before voting against a deal which delivers Brexit. And I hope that those who fear leaving without a deal, whose constituents rely on manufacturing jobs, think very carefully about rejecting a deal that is the only guaranteed way to take no deal off the table. Mr. Speaker, this is the most significant vote that any of us will ever be part of in our political careers. After all the debate, all the disagreement, all the division, the time has now come for all of us in this House to make a decision that will define our country for decades to come. A decision that will determine the future for our constituents, their children and their grandchildren. A decision that each of us will have to justify and live with for many years to come. We know the consequences of voting for this deal. They are laid out in black and white in the pages of the withdrawal agreement. But no one who votes against this deal will be able to tell their constituents what real-world outcome they voted for, because a vote against this deal is a vote for nothing more than uncertainty, division, and the very real risk of no deal.
I'm very grateful for the Prime Minister for giving way. Prime Minister, on any of the analysis of Brexit, economic growth will be lower than staying in the European Union. Will the Prime Minister not realise, on the basis of the knowledge and on the fact that people are going to lose opportunities as a consequence of Brexit, the alternative is to extend Article 50, go back, give the people the say. Let's act in all our interests on the basis of the information that we now have.
I say to the right honourable gentleman, Parliament gave the British people a choice. Parliament, the government of the time, all parties, all those campaigning in that referendum were absolutely clear that whatever the decision of that referendum, it would be respected by government and by Parliament. And I believe that we have a duty to deliver on that referendum vote, and to do so in a way that does protect people's jobs and protects our security and protects our union. A vote against this deal is a vote for nothing more than uncertainty, division, and the very real risk of no deal or no Brexit at all. And it doesn't have to be that way. Tonight we can choose certainty over uncertainty. We can choose unity over division. We can choose to deliver on our promise to the British people, not break that promise and endanger trust in politics for a generation. Because as members of Parliament, we have a duty to serve not our own self-interest nor that of our parties, but the people we were elected to represent. It is the people of this country that we were sent here to serve. The people of this country who queued up at polling stations, who cast their ballots so they might put their faith in us. It is the people of this country who entrusted us with the sacred right to build for them and their children and grandchildren the brighter future they expect and deserve. And if we act in the national interest and back this deal tonight, then tomorrow we can begin to build that future together. If we act in the national interest and back this deal tonight, we can build a country that works for everyone. Together we can show the people we serve that their voices have been heard, that their trust was not misplaced, that our politics can and does deliver, that politicians can rise above our differences and come together to do what the people asked of us. That is the test history has set for us today. It will determine the future of our country for generations. We each have a solemn responsibility to deliver Brexit and take this country forward. And with my whole heart, I call on this House to discharge that responsibility together, and I commend this motion to the House.